Speaking of which, other thing in the news, jobs are up in Canada here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 157,000 new jobs were created in September. I don't actually like the wording of that, new jobs were created. It's more like old jobs were recovered.
I think that's what a lot of
right?
it is. Yeah.
Because this now puts our total job count at the same or even above slightly perhaps, or the same as pre-pandemic levels. So I guess the issue there, though, is that while the job numbers are back, the hours aren't necessarily what they were.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the employment rate is they're saying coming back to what it was pre-pandemic exactly. September versus September, though, I heard for Nova Scotia at least was not quite as exciting as they were hoping, which I found very odd.
We weren't down as much as the rest of the country, though.
We also, yeah, that's true. We also exactly, so our recovery would be a little bit less in comparison because it's not as deflated. But like I know here, like everyone is hunting for people for everything.
I was gonna go down this road, and where I've noticed it is the food and beverage industry.
Oh, restaurants are shut down because they don't have people.
Man, my wife and I, we kind of have this standing date every Wednesday. We go to lunch. Mm-hmm. And normally we have a nice selection. We're fortunate here, man. There's some great food. If you're a food person looking to spend time in the East Coast, Halifax has some phenomenal
ton of options.
Yeah, man. It's great. We're spoiled here. Normally. Right now, man, I can't get lunch anywhere. They're all closed for lunch.
Yeah.
And the issue is staffing. I couldn't believe it, man. I was blown away. We normally have, 12 places that we kind of rotate through, and most of them were closed for lunch. And this is on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Not a holiday, not anything. Closed for lunch because they don't have staffing. And when we were in Cape Breton, Cape Breton's always hit or miss because it's a tourist type place where we were.
Yeah.
And a lot of places were closed. I'm like, okay, they must be winding down the tour season. And I asked some people, and they're like, no, we just have no one to work.
They can't, yeah. Well, and it's like the lodges around the province. There's a few, what's the big lodge that was recently purchased by a developer in town? I think
not
Bank Group purchased a...
Yeah, I know which one you mean. I can't think of it.
I can't remember the name of it either right off the top of my head, but they purchased the lodge and they cannot find people. They renovated the whole place. They're getting the bookings, and now he's doing moving incentives and like relocation incentives for people to come work there, and the pays are way up. And any one of these resorts, same thing with Cape Breton, everywhere I went, signs looking for people, looking for people, looking for people. And then same in town, it's looking for people. But then on the flip side, I hear people being like, there's no jobs.
Yeah, and I think some people would say, well, pay a living wage and all this, pay $20 plus an hour, and then you may get those employees. I don't know how you feel about that, Neal.
I agree with increasing the wages to where they need to be. I mean, this is proof of concept. It's like Amazon came here. They tried to hire 300 people at $15 an hour. They got 3 people. So now they've increased the minimum wage at Amazon to $17 or $18 an hour, and they're filling the positions. So I totally agree with that. That's necessary to do. These blanket ideas of like, okay, minimum wage just needs to be this amount of money. I don't think that's really the way of doing it, because at the end of the day, you can put that into place. All it's going to happen is the bottom line for expense, like to pay for stuff there, is just going to go up. Like everyone's like, oh, like, okay, so I increase minimum wage to $20. Like, we're winning. Woo. Like, not really. Just everything that you sell at your store now is going to be 10% more expensive.
Yeah. It's amazing how people don't understand inflation. It always comes like, you don't understand inflation, do you? Wage is a cost input, and then the prices go up. And then that's not saying we can do a whole episode on what wage ramifications are, and I think that'd be a great idea to talk to someone about that and bring them in. So we're not going to go in there, and I do think that you need to pay people more, and you need to incentivize them to come to work. But circling back to one of the things about this job recovery, this employment recovery, is that we're now ahead of schedule, right? Mm-hmm. Like people thought this was going to take a little bit longer. So when you talk about, job recovery being good, economic indicators being strong, what does that tell you? I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. Like, what do you mean by
what's going up? Rates are going up.
Oh, yeah.
Rates are going up.
Yeah.
Like it's
to combat this.
Totally. So, and the Bank of Canada came out and said, no, we're not going to touch rates until the second half of next year.
Yeah.
But man, like rates are low. And if this was any other circumstance, I think the CPI index was up 4%. I saw that somewhere.
Yeah.
The goal is 2% a year, right? So the consumer price index essentially, really lay terms, measures inflation. It's 4% more expensive to buy stuff now than it was last year. And what they often do when you have all this inflation, because they just printed all of this money. Mm-hmm. And there's this little like in some of the articles, they have this 2-line summary. It's like, oh, and there might be some long-term ramifications of all the money we just spent, and it could lead to financial crisis or some sort of debt payment problems with our federal government if, of course, the economy slows down. But in the meantime, we did ride out what was a pretty dangerous situation, and we shortened it. Like, I think when they compared this to, say, the Great Depression, the job recovery was something like 3 times as quick. So we spent the money and we got righted the ship a little bit here. But man, that consumer price index, all that new printed money, we're talking about not having people for certain jobs. That's all inflation, which typically means interest rates increase.
Almost always. And I think it's going to be big here because our rates are just so low.
Yeah.
And our debt ratios are poor. Even when you look like internationally, a lot of people in Canada are heavily in debt in comparison to some other places.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, again, even if you look at our real estate in general compared to a lot of places is more expensive than others. And so that forces people into a lot more debt usually. Also, our dollar necessarily isn't the strongest thing. So a lot of items are more expensive on a relative basis, whether it's a vehicle or something like that.
Yep.
Which forces
we also have
people
a
into
very
lot of
spread
debt.
out population, and that increases the cost per individual to do a lot of things.
Yeah. So I think on the housing side of things, I think they'll have an impact on how quickly things continue to pace forward with single families. On the rental side, I foresee still a lot of strength, at least locally, just because, again, the vacancy issues and, you know what I mean? So I think those will still keep trucking along, but people make it a little bit more selective. It's definitely not going to bring rents down.
No. I mean, I don't think, obviously, as someone who's looking to build and take on debt, I worry about rising interest rates, but I don't think it's going to be hugely impactful for secured debt. It's always the unsecured debt and stuff that you worry a little bit about.
When I was broke, I had rich habits.